Weaver State Weekly softball show. We're a member of the Big Sky Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Colby Peterson. On our show today, we've got a returning panel of guests. We've got, first of all, out of the gate, we've got the Signpost's own Simon Mortensen with the shirt.
Right.
What's up, man? Long time no talk. Just kidding. We talked on Monday night about Coach Ray's retirement. What's up with you, man?
We did talk on Monday night. I don't know if anything's changed lately. That's pretty quick right there. I don't really have a status update. Just work in school, right?
Just work in school. I mean, as a student, like, what else could it be, right? Like that's all you need in life. Just work in school.
That's right.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, man. And then also we have another returning panelist tonight, Jessica Euler, with us on the show. Jessica, how are you been?
Super excited to be here. I'm going to compete with Mo tonight for who has better hotel internet. That's what my entire evening goal is. So we'll see how we make it through here.
We'll put a bit on that.
Yeah, just feeling confident. Well, so we appreciate Jessica Euler for joining us from a hotel. Actually, I didn't ask you where the hotel was, but joining us from a hotel somewhere. Appreciate you taking some time to chat with us on Weber State Weekly. And so let's look at what's ahead of us here on the show this week. So we've got a player interview, like Jessica noted. We're going to be talking to senior pitcher Mariah Ramirez about just about the season. Going to talk to her a little bit about coming back off of her 2021 campaign where she won conference pitcher of the year, and kind of take us through this year and the accolades that she was able to garner this year. Then we'll do a weekend recap talking all about the Big Sky Conference tournament and the Wildcats ruling their way through the competition in the Big Sky to win the conference championship crown once again. Then, because of that makes the Wildcats the Big Sky champions and gives them a berth into the NCAA tournament. So they're currently in Seattle right now in the Seattle Regional, and they'll be taking on Texas on Friday at 3:30 Mountain Daylight Time. And so we've got a little bit of a preview of who Texas is. I have not seen this opponent in a couple of years, faced them back in 2020, but it's been a couple of years since we've seen them. So we've got a little bit about their team, about kind of their position in the Big 12 and all of that. So we'll go through all that good stuff as we talk softball tonight. But before we get into all that, want to encourage everybody to subscribe to the show, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. All good places to find Weber State Weekly. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Twitter, one of the best places to interact with us. We'll probably be pretty busy on game day on Friday, tweeting the game and trying to interact with fans. It's going to be a good one, and we're excited to kind of see how the Wildcats match up against the number 15 team in the country. And then there's also our Patreon. You go to patreon.com/Weber State Weekly. I've been thinking about something to do on that Patreon account soon, and I got an idea that I'll be announcing soon, and seeing if we can get the support of our patrons to kind of help us expand our coverage of Weber State next season. So that should be coming soon. And then also we want to shout out our sponsor tonight for the show, Studio 98. If you're looking for a ring that's not dumb, boring, run-of-the-mill, all of those things, you want something that really dazzles on your finger, check out Studio 98. They've got a lot of really interesting designs using unique and rare woods. So check out their website. It's studio98.com. That's Studio N-I-N-E and the number 8.com. Run by a fellow Wildcat, loves the purple and white just as much as you and I do. So go check them out and support them. They got a lot of beautiful rings, like I said. They even got a Flying W ring. And it's not on the website, but I bet you if you email them and you ask for it, they'll probably make you one. And it's really cool, and it's on my hand. So go get yourself one of those rings. Email those good folks at Studio 98. Want to thank them for their support of Weber State Weekly. So now let's bring in our player interview. Let's join or welcome back, really. Mariah Ramirez is our first returning guest from the softball team. We interviewed her last season on the heels of her win, becoming conference pitcher of the year. But Mo Ramirez, thanks so much for taking some time to join us once again and chat a little bit of softball. We know you guys are super busy right now, so this time right now means even more to us because you guys are living your best life up in Seattle.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, we're excited to chat with you, man. And so it's been a while since we chatted last. Things have obviously changed. You've added at least one more ring, maybe two. I mean, regular season champs and now conference champions in the tournament. So add a little bit more hardware to your trophy case. But I wanted to kind of go back and kind of walk us through this season. And so let's go back. It seems like so long ago now, but let's go back to the beginning of the season. Coming off of, I think everybody this whole season has agreed that nobody ended the season the way that they wanted to back at the end of, in May 2021, left a sour taste in the mouth. we have a mantra here on Weaver State Weekly: never lose to the green teams. Unfortunately, that's what happened. The Wildcats lost twice to the green teams. Didn't happen this year, by the way. But I wanted to kind of like talk a little bit about bouncing back from that. You come back from the season. You had a great outing against Bradley to open the season for you, and then a couple of rough outings against some really good competition, man. Like playing UCLA, who is a top 10 team perennially, probably one of the best teams ever, and one of the most storied programs in college softball. And then also another tough outing against a good Cal State Fullerton team. And so talk to us a little bit about, those outings and kind of, grinding through that Southern California trip and how you were able to bounce back, because you bounced back in a really big way once we got into that conference slate.
Yeah, no, I did struggle a little bit towards the beginning of the season. I really got in my head and was just trying to be something that I wasn't, and forgot that, spinning the ball, keeping the ball low, not trying to always like throw so hard really like is what worked out for me. So that pretty much like set me the path to like succeed more towards the end of the season, really like dig deep and also have my teammates dig into me to be, that returning like pitcher of the year and all that stuff. So yeah, it's basically what really had my mindset change halfway through season. And UCLA is a really tough team, like offensively and defensively. So going out there and getting the ball, a little nervous the first inning, did give up a couple hits, but then at the end of the day, I was like, like this is a learning lesson for me. This is just something that I'm going to have to bring into my next practice, my next bullpen, and really learn from that. So yeah.
Yeah. And like we said, lesson learned, and bounced back in a big way once the conference slate got started. But Jessica or Simon, questions for 2021 Big Sky Pitcher of the Year, Mariah Ramirez.
Yeah, for sure. So this season, you had some help in the rotation with the arrival of Arissa, and Mandy Sink was there too. So really, we've talked about it quite a few times this season, just how stacked pitching is for the Wildcats this year. How did you all see the split of duties this year?
Basically, kind of seeing the split of duties, like whoever's just on their A game, like Arissa has been just a crucial person to the pitching staff. Like we wouldn't have come this far without her, basically, and I've also learned from her a lot. Mandy's also learned from her, like just seeing like the depth that we have in our pitching staff. I would say like we do have the best pitching staff, I believe, in the Big Sky. I believe it so myself, and just making sure like we have each other's back and just seeing, hey, what do I need to work on for my bullpen, or like, can you help me with this? And just really helping each other has really like been crucial to this pitching staff too.
Definitely. Well, you only like shut out, the entire tournament, all the teams that you played against. So I think that pitching rotation is maybe a little bit of a debatable point on that. That's actually kind of what I'm about, because I think Kobe will kind of talk about your game on that Sac State game. But that's kind of what blew me away was what you guys did in the tournament, because we expected you to win on the show, but I don't think any of us expected 3-run rules, and then 3 shutouts and 27-0 against opponents. Was that kind of like a mindset or a goal coming in? Was like, we want to run rule these teams and we want to, leave no
Our mindset
doubt.
wasn't really like run rule, but it was just like, put the ball in play, gap hits, not really too many pop flies, not trying to be so big. And then also like pitching, give our defense ground balls, like try not to leave the ball so much over the plate. And at the end of it, like we weren't giving up at any runs, like barely even any hits. So that really like put all in all together, like defense, offense, pitching, like everything was just well-rounded and balanced out.
No, definitely. And like, it was kind of one of those things where you guys secured that score. Like, you get it pretty early. Obviously you have to for a run rule and everything like that. But once you get kind of to that point where you can close this game in 5 innings, is there a bit of an added pressure to a pitcher on that, like just to be able to shut that team down and be able to keep the defense and keep their offense scoreless?
So what we basically call that our next inning is always try to get a shutout inning when we score runs. So when you do have that little bit of an advantage and a little bit of that push with the runs and that the offense gives you, it kind of lets you relax more and really just like open up the strike zone a little bit for us and just make the ball move, let them get themselves out.
Definitely widen the margin a bit. I like it.
So this year, go ahead, Colby.
Go ahead, Jessica. Go ahead with your question.
I was just going to say this year, probably the highlight of the season was when you tied the conference record for strikeouts in a single game. You had 16 against Southern Utah University. Colby mentioned at the beginning, like non-conference was a little bumpy, and man, like what a way to come out and set the conference record. So take us through that, whether you were aware of the history you were making in that moment. How did that feel?
Honestly, I was not aware of how many strikeouts I had. I was just in my rhythm and just really just throwing the ball how I usually do. I didn't realize until after the game, our social media guy, AC, was like, you had 16 strikeouts. I was like, no, you have to be playing. Like, I had about like 8 or 9, like I did not have that much. She's like, no, and showed me the paper. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I did not know, like, I had that in me myself.
Yeah, it was definitely in there. And it was interesting to watch because, for those that weren't at Wildcat softball field that day, we were all sitting there watching and saying like, and Garside, who is, calling the game, and it's sort of, it's getting closer. And then, those last couple of games, it's like, oh, wow. They just, she just surpassed 13. Oh, now it's 14. Oh, now it's 15. It's like, oh my goodness. Like, she's going to do it. And then you end the game on 16, like, bam, that's the last one. It was like, oh, wow, there's the record right there. Like, can't believe it. Like, what a way to wrap that game. And once again, just absolutely dominate.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to also ask a little bit about, we talked about the history there. We noted that it was a little bit tough in the out of conference kind of coming back off the 2021 season. But then once you got into that conference slate, you just started to really roll. And in your final 6 appearances, you gave up just 2 runs. And that includes an appearance in the conference tournament. You pitched in the semifinal against one of the most, we talked about this a lot on the show this year about how Sac State had one of the more potent offenses in the conference, right? That like Lewa Day and Lexi Webb and others, or what was the lady? She was I can't remember her name. She hit really well in the conference tournament for them and ended up being a selection for the first team, the tournament team. Really tough offense, right? You come in, you're asked to take the ball in the semifinal, and I told everybody like, if the Wildcats win this game, they're winning the chip. Like, there is no way that they're going to lose twice to whoever comes out of the bottom of the bracket. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you come out, you're giving the ball, shut them down. And like I said, 6 appearances with just 2 runs allowed. What's working for you? Like you mentioned earlier, maybe, trying to throw the ball a little bit too hard earlier, and you kind of had found your rhythm at that point, and you were just like, I'm just going to paint the corners. Like, talk to us a little bit about that run and about how you were able to find that success and just continue to roll.
What really helped me was just like, I've come to when you come to the realization, you're not a strikeout pitcher. You just go out there, get your ground balls, get your pop flies, and have that also offensive support and have that team dig into you. Like, that's really crucial, I feel like, to me, and also going out there and just having fun, not really putting like so much pressure on yourself and not tensing up and just letting the ball go and letting the ball fly. Really like what helped me and what really made me succeed a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it worked.
Thanks.
Yeah, just relaxing and just being like, all right, we're just going to let things roll, and made all the difference. Simon or Jessica, some more questions for Mariah Ramirez?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things, we were kind of talking on Selection Sunday about, where you guys would place, everything like that. And then you guys did place on that 3 seed. We saw the video, you guys kind of celebrating around in the room and everything. That's always one of my favorite things to do is watch Selection Sunday and see these teams celebrate and everything. What's kind of the energy like when you get seeded as a 3 seed and when you get to cheer with your team, everything like that?
Well, going through it, we weren't really called the last probably I think. So we were kind of nervous trying to see like, you know, like where we're gonna go. We're also like anxious just to find out, and we're all making these predictions. Obviously, like crazy predictions, like we want to go on the East Coast or we want to go to like Arkansas or something, you know. And then we come out like Washington. We're like, okay, you know what, like, you know, we're still gonna go out there and do damage and just play Weber State softball. It was so much fun, like just being there with my teammates. Honestly, just love them. I love this team.
Definitely.
I still have full faith you're going to Arkansas, Mo, just so you know. We went out for our matchup for Super Regionals. So that's my life plan for you. So as long as you're on board, then it'll be great. I'm going to come out with you if you go there.
Yes.
My question for you is, what are you kind of most excited for and most anxious for playing Texas here in a couple days?
I'm just excited to play them again. Like, honestly, you know, playing a Big 12 school, like coming from like a mid-major, it's just exciting. Just going out there and just seeing the different types of pitching, seeing the different types of softball that's out there than what we're used to is just, I don't know, I'm just like just excited to go to a regional, especially with this team. Like, this team is just special that I'm on, and I just love every one of them so much, and I just love how we just dig into each other, honestly.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point. Mariah, you've had the opportunity to face this Texas squad in the past. You were on the 2020 team. You were on that team when, you know, the season got cut short, but you did face them in Austin back in 2020. It's not like the Wildcats got like absolutely hammered. I mean, it was a 9-4 loss in Austin. I mean, not bad against a school that has all the money. Let's be real. Texas has all the money.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's what it is, right? And so for you, I mean, is there obviously things change in college softball? I mean, 2 years is a long time when we're talking about rosters turning over and people transferring and all of that. And so, I mean, is there anything to be gleaned from the style of play that you saw in the spring of 2020 to today? Like, how do you see them as an opponent today? Is it completely different? Are there some things that are the same? I mean, I'm sure that there are some players on the roster that remain there that maybe didn't have the same playing opportunities back then. Like talk to us about like that change and facing another team like this over time in your career in college softball.
You know, we're going to be seeing probably like either a true rise ball or a true drop ball pitcher more than what we're used to seeing. And also, too, like their lefties aren't always going to just like short game us. They're going to put the ball in play and really just try to tap something and run out fast. And I feel like we are going to see a little bit faster people than what we're used to, but I think we'll do fine. We're going to just fine, just as we usually do, you know?
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk a little bit more about Texas later in the show, but some interesting things about their game. And yes, they do play in the Big 12, and they did beat Oklahoma, which is, I mean, seems impossible. Looking at their stats, it's like, how does this team lose? Like, they're just insane. But yeah, it will be, I think, a fun and interesting matchup for you all, and especially, you know, to be in the Emerald City, to be at regionals. It's going to be really, really special. Simon or Jessica, any parting questions for Mariah Ramirez before we let her go tonight?
I'm just excited to see you guys play. I really am. I've loved watching you guys play all season, and going to be nice to see you play Texas, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and I just want to say the same thing. Like, good luck. It would be super cheesy. You don't need luck because y'all are just an amazing, skilled team, but really excited to see y'all on Friday.
Thank you so much, guys.
Hey, Mariah, best of luck to you all in this Wildcat squad. Like we said, we've been following you all the entire season, rooting you on here from Ogden and elsewhere, in my case. But like, we also wanted to say congratulations to you personally because, you know, you were named a second team all-conference selection at pitcher. And so just more hardware for your trophy case as a Wildcat. I think next season will be your final season as a Wildcat. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so a storied career, man, with one more to come. So, man, we're just so excited for you all. Wish you all the best of luck on Friday afternoon. If you don't know, folks, it's 3:30 Mountain Time. You know, you will have the opportunity to watch the Wildcats take on the Longhorns at 3:30 on ESPN. I think it's going to be on ESPN Plus. I don't know, but I think it's also on.
I think it might be.
there was some confusion on the selection show on like what exactly network it was going to be, because they were like, oh, it's going to be on Longhorn Network. Like, it better not be, because I'm not.
They're like, I hope
I don't
it
have that station. Like, well, never.
was.
So anyway, wish you all the best of luck, Mo, on Friday, and hope to see more.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Bye.
Right. Want to thank Mariah Ramirez one more time for hanging out with us here on Weber State Weekly and taking some time to chat, guys. I mean, what a great example of Wildcat softball, right? Just going out there, doing the thing that she does best, and being very successful at it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that was I was kind of there on that game that she pitched against Sac State. I had to go to work first, and I was like rushing over from work to get to the game, and praying that they weren't going to run rule them as fast as because I'm like, it was looking like a run rule early on, right? Like I'm like, and so I'm like, I know they're going to do it, but I'm like, but luckily they stayed on the plate long enough, and I saw her pitch her last pitch against that one where pitched out and struck out swinging, everything like that. Just awesome to talk to her after the game too. She was super excited about it, and yeah, great to watch that one. So yeah,
that is great. Well, let's talk a little bit now about the conference tournament, because it was a big weekend. I think we all had plenty of nerves going in. We didn't know what to expect. The Wildcats had secured the regular season conference title, but we've plenty of those banners out in the outfield. Not necessarily what this team was after. They were after the conference tournament crown to send them back to the NCAA tournament. Had not been able to go since 2019. Of course, 2020 season was canceled, and then the ill-fated 2021 campaign and the way that it ended against the green teams, who you don't lose to. So let's talk a little bit about this, because there's a lot that we could say about, like Simon, like you mentioned earlier, 3 games, 5 innings each, run rule each. The Wildcats, boom, boom, boom. Conference champions basically as fast as possible. Like you can't get it done faster than the way that the Wildcats did. And so the thing that stuck out to me most, and I wanted to get you all's thoughts, I mean, 27-0. And they mentioned this on the selection show. The Wildcats scored 27 runs, did not give up a single run the entire tournament. And I kind of want to ask you guys, like, do you see that more as a credit to the pitching staff, because they did great? Like we said, Arissa pitched a couple of gems, and then Mo Ramirez, who we just talked to, pitched that middle game, that semifinal game against a potent Sac State offense. Didn't give up a single one. Is that a credit to them, or is it a credit to the defense? Because the defense on that left side throughout the tournament with Emily Rule and Michaela Donahue were absolutely dynamite. Like, nothing got through there in that hot corner and beyond. So which do you feel it is? Do you feel it's more pitching? Do you feel it was more the defense? Maybe a little bit of both? What are your thoughts?
that is a good one. Obviously when you're run ruling 3 teams in a row with scores like that, obviously all 3 sides have to be just shut out, fantastic. You got to have great defense, you got to have great pitching, you got to have great hitting. Just something that I love to see. I'm kind of partial to loving to watch pitchers play. And I think, you look at the last 2 games, where you look at Mo's game, where aside from that first inning, which was really just 2 hits, she pitched a perfect game. And can't ask for more on that one. And Arissa practically did the same thing the next game against the same team. So I loved watching these pitchers play, and I also loved watching the pitchers bat. I remember it was the first game. It was Idaho State, and it was the first inning, and Arissa hit one to around left field, and it got to the warning track, and she was popped out at that point. But then the bases were loaded in the second inning, and she hit a grand slam right there. It was like, okay, I know where it needs to be now, and then so. I mean, you can always credit both sides of the ball like that, but I loved watching these pitchers play. That was that'd be mine right there.
Yeah, and I would say, I completely agree with Simon, where defensively, we just were rather incredible. It didn't hurt, especially playing Sac State, the number of errors that they had. So our team was great. I mean, just like we've talked about, but both times we matched up against Sac State, like they just had some, unnecessary, unforced errors, and it really impacted their game. And once again, I think that's something that impacts your mindset. So if you're coming in against just a stellar, well-rounded team that's really coming back to be like, this is our house, we lost here last year. Like, I think we came in as a force to be reckoned with. And if you're a team, the last game, I think it was the first one, first inning, we had 2 runs, and it was like, okay, well, I'm good, right? Like, you always get a little bit anxious until you get those first 2 runs in. They came so gosh dang quick, and then it was like, I'm good to sit back for the rest of the game. So I think definitely, both sides of the ball, we did fantastic, but it also helped that we played teams who had unnecessary errors.
No, it's a good point. I mean, the errors definitely help because there were a couple of times where who was it? I think it was like Casey Whiting or somebody ends up getting on base. Like there was a catcher interference thing where like she ran into like somebody. I think it was maybe the pitcher like ran across into the baseline and like she ran into her and it was like, why did you do that? So they said, yeah, that's a base, right? And there were lots of instances of that kind of thing happening right throughout these games. And we know that the Wildcats, we've talked about the fact that the Wildcats do a really good job of they put pressure on defenses using base running, right? So it's a lot of stealing second, but then also like creating situations where, maybe they think that they're going to, pick somebody off, but then something else is happening over here. And it just really makes defenses have to make decisions and they don't always make those decisions or they don't make the right ones. And so I think you're right, Jessica, that like those kinds of things get in people's head and especially early offense, right?
Yep.
I agree that like if the Wildcats are in and they're scoring early, that gets into players' heads. Like I was thinking that about in that first game against Idaho State with Haley Rainey. Haley Rainey, she was reigning freshman of the year, which was a great title for her. But I felt that in the games that we had, the Wildcats had faced her up in Pocatello when they were able to score some runs. She really kind of struggled after that. It got in her head. And so if the Wildcats could do that early, they were going to be a little bit shaky. I think we saw it again in the second game against Marissa Bertuccio, who ended up winning Conference Pitcher of the Year. She gave up some early runs that made some trouble. And I think she only pitched 2 in that out in the semifinal outing, right? And that was on par with what we saw when Sac State came to Ogden for that 3-game set. She pitched a couple. I think she pitched 3. She pitched like 2 1/3 in the second outing or something like that. Like she didn't have a lot of really great outings because early offense knocked them out of the game. And I got to wonder if the Wildcats don't take that same approach to Texas on Friday, where they know that they're going to be facing a very good pitcher. And we'll talk about her in a bit, but it seemed like that early offense really made the difference for the Wildcats, getting those other teams off their game a little bit. And then, like Simon, you said, those big swings. I mean, Chloe Camarero had some really big swings. Kel McHouston had some really big swings. Even Faith Ho hit her second bomb of the season in the conference tournament, right? That grand slam by Arissa Henderson in the first game, when that grand slam happened, like I'm running around the house just like yelling, "Let's go!" Because it's like, bro, we're winning this game. Like there's no way that this Wildcat pitching squad is giving up. Well, I think at that point we were up like 6 runs. I was like, there's no way they're giving up 6 runs to Idaho State. It's not gonna happen. And so I feel like that just kind of set the tone and they just kept rolling.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the Wildcats batting order, especially during this tournament and everything like that. You look at it, Faith Ho was actually brought home twice on home runners in that first game. She was brought home by that Chloe Camarero one, and she was brought home by that Arissa Henderson grand slam, obviously, and everything like that. Or she might have already been home on the Arissa. No. Okay. My memory's going a little bit off on that one, but you get the point, right? Faith Ho is one of those players that can always get on base. We talk about it time and time again about how phenomenal her batting average is, everything like that. And she's one of those players that'll rip up a defense, hit a triple, anything like that. And then you got 2 absolute sluggers right after her. And it really does set, the tone of the game. That's how they're able to get these early points and kind of we talk about Haley Rainey, and that is one of her only weaknesses is that she was a freshman, and freshmen always come in with a little bit of a it's always a little bit harder. Things get in their head a little bit easier. I think one of these days, especially when she's a junior, Haley Rainey is going to be one of the top pitchers in the Big Sky still, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think that's one of those things that's it's just perfect combination of just having that early scoring offense right there. So yeah.
Jessica, I wanted to ask you about Arissa Henderson's performance. I mean, she ended up winning the conference tournament MVP. I mean, she had some big moments at the plate. She also shut out, her opponent in 2 games. She wins the conference tournament MVP. I think it was pretty clear that was going to happen after her performance in the championship game. Did you feel that it was a consolation prize for maybe the Pitcher of the Year award that she should have gotten, or maybe it was something else? How did you feel about her winning the conference tournament MVP and kind of what that meant overall?
I think it was well deserved. So could it be a consolation prize? She deserved it. Gosh darn it! Here and before now, when we were watching the game, I was with the group I was with. I was like, she's our Player of the Year, and we were tempted to taunt everyone about it. But I just going back to how we've talked about before, I think it was absolutely a misstep to not pick her Player of the Year. And it just felt really good to have her come out and have another consistent showing that demonstrated that she was, the conference MVP and the overall Player of the Year in our hearts. So I think it was very well deserved on her part, certainly. And was really glad to see it happen. Also, just once again, not really surprised because she came out again and had another stellar performance.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was very lucky to not be in the stands for the championship game on Saturday because I would have definitely started a chant, "We want Bertuccio, we want Bertuccio." How do you not pitch the conference pitcher of the year in the championship game?
In the clincher game, what in heaven's name? And to bring out their 3rd string pitcher first in the conference championship. I'm like, who is that? Because I got there just a few minutes late. I'm like, who is that person pitching? And what in heaven's name were they thinking? So yes, I'm sad you weren't there for that chant, Colby.
Yeah, because I had my beef on Twitter about Marissa Bertuccio being conference player or pitcher of the year, and we can argue, and I guess, a lot of it was, well, her in-conference stats were very, very good. She pitched a lot more innings than Arissa Henderson did because, like we mentioned with Mariah Ramirez just a segment ago, nobody else really had the 1-2 punch that the Wildcats had. There were a couple of teams that might be close. Idaho State had something something not that's brewing in Pocatello with Haley Rainey, and I can't remember what their second pitcher's name is. Who was it?
Emma McMurray.
Yeah, Emma McMurray. She had. I mean, she was. Her ERA was good. You know what I mean? She wasn't Mo Ramirez and Arissa Henderson, but they had some options there. But yeah, to not pitch him and I also get maybe it's listen, you've lost to this team 4 times. You got to try something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to try something. And so maybe that's where they pitch Nunez. They say, okay, we're going to start Nunez. We're just going to see what happens. See if maybe she can have some success against this Wildcat offense. Because the Wildcat hit tool, we talked a lot about this last week. The hit tool is just phenomenal. And it gives people the opportunity. It gives the team the opportunity to really do some damage early. And so, but no Bertuccio at all in the championship game in 5 innings. You're not even going to try.
That's the thing, because I realized she pitched 8 innings against Portland State, right? Obviously that happened, but I kind of view that
on the line,
right? I view that as a mistake because at that point you're playing against Portland State, and you have to realize you're going to start you got to start using Lexi Webb or something like that just when you get into those later innings on that one, because you got to rest up Bertuccio, because in case you make it, you're going to play the best team in the Big Sky, and you have to use your best pitcher. This pitcher that you've been praising, talking about the entire season, everything like that. You have to do that, right? You can't pitch your 8 innings on the game right before the championship game, no matter what your what your state of mind is. Like, oh, we just have to get rid of Portland State, everything like that. I honestly think they should probably Lexi up at the end of that game because I think we would have had a little bit more of a competitive championship game with that. So yeah. Not that much more competitive, but maybe a little bit more. I don't know. She wasn't really competitive against us, so it depends. But yeah.
One other thing I wanted to shout out because you mentioned the 8-inning, extra innings between Sac State and Portland State to move on to the championship game in the bottom of the bracket. The Wildcats did not get an opportunity to face Olivia Gray this season. I think it was a touted matchup. We talked all about it throughout the season. We wanted to see that matchup. Olivia Gray did a great job against the Wildcats in the conference tournament in 2021. A big reason why the Wildcats lost on the first day. And so, are you guys sad that the Wildcats never got a chance to face Olivia Gray? Sad or nah? You don't really care.
We got nothing to prove. We went 27 against everybody else. We got nothing to prove.
No, that's
yeah.
fair.
I was surprised to not see them, right? I think it speaks to the strength of Sac State's team against everyone else who's not us, especially here later in the season. And, there was certainly part of me that wanted to see it, but right along with Simon, the cards were played. So it turned out we'll make up for it next year.
Cards were played.
Yep. I think those Portland State games, they went on long. Like those were long games. You had that Montana game that went extra innings and everything like that. And that's one of the things, you got Olivia Gray, but problem is you don't have anyone else on that bench. And so they were pitching her hard. And I think she was just gassed. And it really speaks to how important depth is on the team. So.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you guys what you felt the most clutch moment of the conference tournament was. I mean, could be in one of the Wildcat games, could have been another one. Like you said, there were a couple that went in extra innings. What did you think was probably the most clutch moment in this conference tournament in Ogden?
I don't want to point out the Montana Portland State game because I don't want to give any credit to the Grizz ever because, that's just not right. That was pretty clutch, though. I'll admit it. Those props to them against Portland State. You're obviously an underseeded team and able to come out and make a statement in that first round. That's a big moment. I think, honestly, Mo's performance in that second game was phenomenal. And I really think there's nothing more clutch than shutting down a team like that, especially once you've secured that run rule. And I think our Weber State pitching just right there during those last two innings 4 and 5 on every game that we had. I just don't think you can play more clutch than that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the same way. I think our pitching throughout was fantastic. The moment where I was like, oh, it's over, right, was really those 2 runs in the first inning of the third game. I was like, okay, we're good. Because, there was part of me that's like, can we do it 2 days in a row against the same team? They've seen us, 4 times. Like, does this feel different? And once we got those 2 runs, it was where I was like, nope, this is us. This is who we are, and we're going to take this home. So,
yeah, my clutch moment was actually away from the top of the bracket. It was down in the bottom of the bracket, the semifinal matchup between Portland State and Sac State. We mentioned Emily Johansson a little bit earlier. She ends up hitting a bomb in the 8th to right field to put the Vikings up 3-2. And I mean, that doesn't last because they come back and, they're able to score a couple and it's, and tie the game again. But, man, that moment felt so big. And Johansson just had so many of those big hits throughout this, the conference tournament that I was really impressed with her because there were a lot of times where Portland State was just so scrappy. Wouldn't you guys agree in this tournament? Yes, they lost to Montana and they probably shouldn't have. But in the bottom of the bracket, they just found ways to claw back and get back into the semifinal. They did lose to Sac State in extras. They couldn't. Olivia Gray, I think, was probably a little bit too pitched out at that point. She just didn't have it. But they tried. It was a formula that worked for them last year. They rode Olivia Gray's arm all the way through the top of the bracket, and it got them a conference championship. But man, Emily Johansson, I was really, really impressed with her game throughout the conference tournament. I was going to ask the last question, but I think we'll skip it and we'll move on. I was just going to ask about who you guys think is going to be competition. I mean, a lot of
Sac
seniors.
State, they're coming back. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got Lexi Webb, Lua Day, and Bertuccio coming back. So they're going to be the team to watch next year.
Simon, I don't know, who do you think is going to be? Because like I was about to say, we have a lot of returning. I mean, the core of this team returns next year. We're losing Arissa Henderson, of course. We talked about losing Abby Sagard.
Chloe Camarero.
Yeah, we're losing Chloe, of course, which hurts. And there was one more, right? I swear there was. Oh, BMO with Brooke Moya. And so, the core of this team remains. And so I think they're going to continue to be the toast of the conference next season. But if I'm picking a team, Idaho State.
That's mine.
Really?
Something's brewing in Pocatello.
Oh, I can't wait to argue with y'all next year.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think we still come out on top, but
right.
But
2 to Idaho State, 1 Sac State. This is going to be interesting to see.
And maybe what my problem is like I'm not afraid of Sac State now. We just trounced them 5 times. They scored 4 runs against us all season, and we faced them 5 times. They scored 4 runs in 1 inning against Arissa Henderson, and that was it. That's all they got. That's all the offense. And of course, you can say, well, things are going to be different next year, blah, blah, blah. It's like, are they though? Because it's basically the same lineup minus Chloe Camarero and BMO. Like, that's it. Like, I'm not afraid of Sac State.
That's one of those things. Like, we forget about this Idaho State team at the beginning of the regular season play. Went up against us and probably gave us like one of our biggest scares with that 17-11 game. Like,
yeah, good call.
Yeah, they can play. Like, I think Haley Rainey is going to turn into one of the best pitchers in the Big Sky. She already is, but I think we're only going to see her get better. I think they have. It is one of those teams that's scary because it is a team that we obviously destroyed them in conference tournament, but you remember that beginning of the regular season, they were close, like pretty good. So yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Texas, guys. So Wildcats win the conference tournament. We watched Selection Sunday. The Wildcats are announced are a 3 seed. That's never happened in the Big Sky Conference before. The Wildcats get the 3 seed in the Seattle region. University of Washington hosts. Washington will take on Lehigh. The Wildcats will face the Texas Longhorns of Texas Austin. And so let's talk a little bit about this because, like Mariah Ramirez noted earlier, the Wildcats have faced this team before. They faced them in 2016. They faced them in 2020, both times in Austin, and now they'll get to face them in Seattle in the regional. So let's talk a little bit about this team. One of the things that stood out to me was Texas is a funny team because they are similar, I think, to a lot of teams in the Big Sky. They've got one pitcher who is just absolutely dynamite and pitched most of their innings, like a good chunk of the innings that they dealt with this year. And that is senior pitcher Haley Dulcini. She's a transfer from Fresno State. I think she's likely. I think she's she's going to be it. Like the Wildcats will be facing her in the circle on Friday afternoon. She's pitched the most innings, 164, and she's got the best ERA on the team at 2.32. The other thing that surprised me about her, she's holding opponents to 168 in the Big 12 conference, right? Like that's some stiff competition. So she's holding big opponents to 168 in the conference. How do you see the Wildcats cracking a pitcher like her, who is now a senior? She's played a whole season at Texas Austin. She's basically seen the best in the country. This is a Longhorn team that beat Oklahoma, who is, I think, the odds-on favorite to win the national championship again this year. How do the Wildcats crack her and try and get some offense going?
I think it's one of those things where she's a tough pitcher to face, but I think we also have to remember that we have a very tough pitcher to face as well, who I We got Arissa, and I think that, I don't think any team really wants to face Arissa Henderson. She is a tough opponent, and I think we can square up with them pretty well on that end. Just with that, I do think that one of the things we got to do is just like what we were doing in the conference tournament. It is getting on base early, because that's going to lead to kind of getting that cracking down and everything. I don't think we're going to win if we get into inning 6 and all of a sudden we get our first hit. That's something pretty tricky to do. So I think we got to start swinging early, and I think we just got to start cracking down that pitching, cracking down the defense, because that's one of the things. The defense right there is actually their fault. That's their Achilles heel. They're not one of the better fielding teams in the NCAA, and so I think that's one of those things we get. I don't think we're going to see like a series of errors like we did against Sac State or anything like that, but I do think that is going to be our ticket into the second round of this tournament, is to take advantage of that defense.
Yeah, and just to build on that a little bit more, yeah, she's a fantastic pitcher. Clearly, a very good pitcher, competing against some very good teams throughout the year, and to hold their batting average, that low is pretty incredible. That being said, this is another instance where we shouldn't really sell ourselves short either. When we look at national rankings, we're 20 in batting average and Texas is 22. So we're hanging right there with this team. Granted, certainly that'll look different against a pitcher like this, but I think we've got just as good about it when we look at even the teams, in the field. I think that as long as we play our game, then I think that we might do really well, right?
So before we move off of this and talk about the Texas offense, I wanted to continue, kind of in the vein that Simon sent us down here, where Texas is not necessarily a shutdown pitching team. 2.32 is a good ERA, but it's not the best. And even in the Big 12, the Big 12 is insane. Oklahoma's team ERA is 0.81. Oklahoma's is Oklahoma State 1.91, Baylor at 2.91, and Texas team ERA of 3.3. So that's not really this Texas team's calling card. They're not a shutdown pitching team, and they're not a great defensive team either. They came in 6th out of 7 Big 12 teams in fielding percentage, 4th in team ERA. So like you talked about, Simon, I wanted to maybe put that question to Jessica, and like, how do you see the Wildcats taking advantage of what I think is an opportunity? Because we've seen the trickery on the base paths, right? We've seen the Wildcats manufacture runs doing things on the base paths that make defenses have to choose. They're very good at that. Texas is not a great fielding team, and so I think there's potentially an opportunity to use some of that trickery. How do you see it playing out?
Oh, I think it's just going to be fun to watch. I think, right now I'm sure we've spent hours watching film, and if we can get the hit, right, if we get on base, then I have such and if we start to, once again, just like Simon said, I think we do it early, and once we do it early, we get our confidence in place and we're good to go. Just once again, because I love to look at the national stats. Their fielding percentage isn't ranked in the top 50. We are 24, right? So once again, like, I have such faith. If we have faith in ourselves, if we use what I'm sure we're learning in film right now, if we get on base, then I think this is anybody's ball game.
Yeah. And look out for Marissa Serta to come on early, because she's a phenomenal pinch runner, and I think that's going to defense even more so. So I think we'll see a lot of that come into it.
Yeah, and I think, the way we steal bases is just incredible. Sometimes I'm sitting there watching them and miss it happen, right? There are times we clearly set up the play to execute that, but there are other times where we are just on the ball looking for the opportunity, right?
Yeah. Good call out on Marissa Serta. She was put in that position often this season, that pinch running position, and, made her way around. Let's talk a little bit about the Texas offense now, guys. One thing that stood out to me was that it doesn't feel like Texas is a team with a ton of power. Their team leader only had 10 home runs for the season. Now, keep in mind the pitching that they've been facing, and it's like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? Like, they're not hitting a lot of balls out of the yard because the level of talent that they're facing is difficult. But what stood out to me was that they seemed to be a very patient team at the plate. They were second in the Big 12 in walks, third in strikeouts, right? And so like that's third best, right? They struck out the third least out of all the teams in the conference. And they were second in on base percentage. Now keep in mind that like Oklahoma is number one in basically all of these, right? Like they're just a dynamo, but Texas is coming in second behind them. And so, how do the Wildcats keep the Longhorn offense at bay? Because we've talked about the pitching, we've talked about the stellar defense, especially on that left side, like over the weekend during the conference tournament with Emily Rule and Mac Donahue doing just a phenomenal job. I mean, how do you keep the offense at bay to give yourself those opportunities? Because facing Haley Dulcini, like it's gonna be tough to get on base, and she's a senior and she's seen a couple of things, so it's not like you're. I don't think that she's you can't Haley Rainey her where you can just like get in her head early because you're on base and you're scoring runs, right? Like how do you see the Wildcats keeping that offense at bay because it's patient and it's calculating?
Yeah, I think it's playing our game, being confident in ourselves, but I also think this is one of the places where it helps to have deep pitching, right? I assume we'll start Arissa. I don't think it would hurt once again to start Mo in a situation like this, but we have other options. And I think that that is what is likely to help us in this. I do not imagine that we see one person pitch this entire game.
And I take this kind of like I look at some of the I kind of had this belief in basketball as well when we would have these players that you just have to kind of let score a little bit. And we kind of had that against Darian White when we played them on the women's side. I think it was around January, and we actually ended up beating Montana State, and that was one of the bigger games. I think it's one of those things where Janae Jefferson is going to get on base.
Yes,
It's just pretty hard to stop her, right? But you look at they still have other phenomenal players. You got Mia Scott on there still, but a freshman, and I think that you just have to take you have to factor in which batters you can really have some leeway against, and which batters you just got to say, look, I will try my hardest. I'll make sure that they kind of just try to stay on first base, everything like that, because Janae Jefferson obviously is a hard player to stop. And so I think you just have to factor in who is going to be your big threats and kind of arrange your defensive scheme to meet those players that you can maybe get an out against. So yeah.
Yep.
The other thing that I love about it is regionals is nobody's home, right? And this is West Coast, so the trek for folks from Texas is farther. Not that they're not a team that won't travel, I'm sure. But that being said, they might be putting all their eggs in a different basket to travel later on, right? When they're a little bit closer to home. So I like the fact that we're on a neutral field for both of us. I think that'll be helpful here as well.
Yeah, Simon, good call on Janae Jefferson. I mean, she's a phenomenal player. She's very much, she's a Tony Gwynn-esque player, I think is the way that I would describe her. She led the team in batting average, hits, two baggers, on base percentage. She also led the Big 12 in hits, doubles, and at bats. And so she's also the one that on the team that strikes out the least. She's kind of tied with a couple of qualified players at 10. She struck out just 10 times all season. She's a very, very patient hitter, but she doesn't hit for power. And so I think you're right that like with a player like her, she's probably going to get on base, and you have to do your best then to deal with those who come after her, right? Like players like Maria, this is Iacopo, right? Like Mary Iacopo I think she had 10 home runs on the season. She plays catcher and first base, but she has power. She's a transfer from the University of Oregon. This is her senior season at Texas. She's shown some really phenomenal, a really phenomenal hit tool this season. And so you'd have to watch out for somebody like her, or who else was I looking at? Courtney Day as well. 9 home runs on the season, 10 doubles, 34, hits. I mean, she's good, and you got to watch out because she can get you. But Mia Scott, Janae Jefferson, Mary Iacopo, I think those are the names that you're probably going to need to watch for with this Longhorns offense. parting thoughts, folks, before we wrap up this segment on Texas and who they are?
I think that's one of those things. Like, this Texas team is tough. Obviously, I don't think any of us have a doubt about that. You know, you're playing one of the top 15 teams in the entire NCAA. But if we beat Texas, you know, I see us as the, you know, St. Peter's right there. I really do. I think that if any team is poised for that Cinderella run story, I think it's Weber State. I think we've all been watching it this season. This is a special team, and this is one that they can make a deep tournament run. So.
Yeah, the only thing I keep thinking about with this game is my Southern's coming out. I ain't scared. We got this. I'm excited for Saturday. I think that, you know, if there was ever a chance, this is the best chance we ever had. And I think a good game against Texas is a good showing that leads us. I think we beat Texas. We make it out to Super Regionals is what I think. So I'm super excited for 3:30 Friday.
All right. Yep. I mean, if there was a team that was going to make a Cinderella run, like Simon said, this is probably the one. Probably, you know, I think we talked a little bit about this after the Wildcats ruled their way to a conference championship. Is this the best team that the Big Sky Conference has ever seen? I think so. And a win over Texas would prove it. So we'll see what happens on Friday afternoon at 3:30 Mountain Time as the Wildcats face Texas up at the Seattle Regionals at the University of Washington. My boss actually is a UW grad, and so I was like, "Hey, what's the weather like up there, man?" And he's like, "It's supposed to be okay, so should be good. We'll see what happens." Hopefully, they said it's been really, really gray, so hopefully it clears up for us for Friday, so we can have some nice NCAA tournament softball, and obviously go Wildcats. Let's just there's only one event on the tournament, folks, or on the schedule, and it's the one we just talked about. Friday, May 20th versus number 15 Texas, the NCAA tournament regionals in the first round. 3:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I believe you can get that on ESPN Plus. If that's wrong, I'm sorry. I tried to find a place and like everybody kept leading me astray. So should be on ESPN Plus, I believe. You know, so we'll see what happens. But we'll wrap up the show. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at WeberStateWeekly@gmail.com. We got the patreon.com/WeberStateWeekly. Thank you so much to our patrons. Yeah. Simon, Jessica, I mean, we're going to have probably at least one more show this weekend, this season. So appreciate both of you for being a part of the softball show and all of the coverage and watching this team. They've been a ton of fun to watch, and we'll be rooting for them wherever we may be.
There we go. Yeah, definitely.
So we'll wrap it up like we usually do. Weber State, Weber State.
Great.
Great.
Great. Go Wildcats.